Well, hello everyone. Happy Thursday, April 20th. Normally we're on Friday, but I am flying out tomorrow morning and won't be landing in time. So it's great to get to be with you. I think this is SADS Live. I lost track, 1 something, 116 or 117. I'm Mike Ackerman, genetic cardiologist at the Mayo Clinic, and the Winland Smith Rice Genetic Heart Rhythm Clinic director and director of the Winland Smith Rice Sudden Death Genomics Laboratory. And since 2006, I've had the privilege of serving as president alongside Alice Laura, our CEO of the Sudden Arrhythmia Death Syndrome Foundation, the SADS Foundation. And we are here for you. We have been here for a long time as an organization, particularly focused in this venue since that thing called COVID-19 pandemic. We just celebrated our third anniversary since the launch of this in March of 2020. And we continue to be together, usually every other Friday, but today is the first Thursday. So I hope some of you come along today with your questions. I'm looking forward to seeing who saw the notice and who's joining us for your questions, and then my attempt at seeing if I can deliver answers as good as your amazing questions. But before we take those questions, I want to have our SADS Foundation introduce a new video that we've put together to illustrate some of the key components of one of our pillars. We have several pillars of SADS Foundation, which you know is the largest and frankly the only nonprofit advocacy organization devoted to your conditions, whether your condition is called long QT syndrome, this is your home, CPVT, Brugada syndrome, ARVC, and the like. So one of the pillars, besides awareness and education and supporting and linking families to research, is our number one pillar. I think our core is supporting you, our family support program. And so we have put together, Alice and her team has put together a video about the SADS Foundation Family Support Program. So Aaron, do your magic and take it away.
Hi, my name is Christy, and I am thankful for Genevieve and the Family Support Program at SADS. We've had a wild year as a family, finding out that 3 out of 5 of our family members have long QT syndrome type 2. And I'm so grateful that a friend mentioned the SADS Foundation. So we Googled it and we found the family support number and we gave a call, and it was so wonderful to have a real person on the other end of the line to talk to that has walked this journey before us, that could answer some questions, that made us feel that we were not alone. So it's been such a blessing to have a resource like the Family Support Program and Genevieve. We're so grateful and hope that many others that are looking for answers and connection can give a call and connect with SADS. So thank you for all that you do.
I say the number one thing has been community and, education, but it's been community. It's been realizing that I am not alone in experiencing the disease that I have, which is Brugada syndrome, and understanding and pushing out that what I have is more than just something someone can Google, because that leads to a lot of speculation. And SADS really allows me to more easily communicate what my condition is, and that's a really big important thing for me. Communicating electrophysiology is not an easy thing to my family, to my friends, to my colleagues, and SADS community. And education, but it's been community. It's been realizing that I am not alone in experiencing the disease that I have, which is Brugada syndrome, and understanding and pushing out that what I have is more than just something someone can Google, because that leads to a lot of speculation. And SADS really allows me to more easily communicate what my condition is, and that's a really big important thing for me. Communicating electrophysiology is not an easy thing to my family, to my friends, to my colleagues, and SADS community has really allowed me to not only feel connected to everyone that I would never have met, but also it allows me to then further the message that I want to make sure I want to get out there. So community, I would say, is a big part of that. So thank you so very much.
Well, thanks so much for putting that together. And you heard mention Genevieve, and I'd like Aaron to bring on our Director of Family Support, Mrs. Genevieve Eccles. Well, hello, Genevieve, and welcome to SADS Live.
Thank you, Dr. Ackerman.
Well, it's pretty clear from just that brief video clip that it's one thing to have structure. It's another thing to have that incredibly special person who makes it all happen. And it's safe to say that you are that special person. So on behalf of the SADS Foundation and the families who trust SADS for their support, I really appreciate you. And thanks for what you've done to create really an incredibly special family support program.
Thank you.
Now, there's three cornerstones of it that you focus on and that you direct: support groups, one-on-one support, and educational programs. Give us a sense about what those support groups are and what you've done with those.
Our most popular support group that we have the highest attendance in is our ICD support group. That support group meets once a month, and it's for adults who have ICDs. That support group has been going on for the last 3 years, and we've really formed a tight community and bond in that group. A lot of people with ICDs maybe feel alone, either because their condition is severe enough that they've needed an ICD, they've experienced shocks, or have had a sudden cardiac arrest. And so that's been a great place to provide support. We have an ARVC group within the ICD support group, and it's really grown a lot over the last 3 years. That group is facilitated by people who have ICDs. I'm one of the facilitators, and I've loved getting to know everyone in that group. We also have a SADS Connect that's available to adults who have any SADS condition. They do not need to have an ICD to come to that group. Sometimes that's a really small group, but always the people that come to that group really have questions that they need answered. Many times it's people who are newly diagnosed and they're just really looking for that support, and that's been an invaluable resource to them.
That's great, Genevieve. And then when I think back to our founder of the SADS Foundation, Dr. Michael Vincent, who has passed away, one of the reasons why he started the SADS Foundation is as a place for families to be gathered together, create a sense of community, but also that one-on-one to make them feel like they weren't so alone. And that kind of has been the bread and butter of SADS Foundation for over 30 years now, is that a place that a family could call, could reach out to, could hear somebody who could take them by the hand and walk them through this new and initially for many of them a very scary and uncertain journey. And now the good news is the journey is far less uncertain than what it once was, and very, very much less scary. But nevertheless, for those families to know that they could reach out and have one-on-one touch. Discuss a little bit about that second element of the family support with being the one-on-one support. How does that happen? What does that look like?
So first of all, I have to say that the first time I watched that video, it actually made me cry. Each of those families are ones that I've talked to individually to help them from the beginning of their diagnosis to where they were able to get the correct treatment. And then now they're at the point where they're living and thriving with their condition, which is our whole purpose at the SADS Foundation. People can email, they can fill out our form requesting more information. They contact us through social media. And so when that happens, I'm able to find a time to meet with them. Sometimes it's during the week, sometimes it's even on a weekend if a family cannot meet during the week, and talk to them where they're at in their SADS journey, whether it's the fact that they're brand new or that they've had something new happen in their lives that has required extra support. And we help with physician referrals. We help with giving more education about their specific SADS condition, or connecting them with other people who have the same condition or who have experienced similar issues on their SADS journey.
And speaking of education, one of the components of the triad that you oversee, besides the support groups, the one-on-one support, are the educational programs. And so share a little bit about who are our audiences for those educational programs, and what are the kind of things that we at SADS Foundation are producing in that educational realm.
We do a lot of webinars. We do some for physicians and we do some for families, and a lot of times those overlap. We have families that come to the medical education webinars as well. We try to really think about the families and topics that they really need to hear, whether it's a new topic that's come up with different treatments, like we just had a gene therapy webinar, or if it's summer and sports, so that we can educate families on what they need to know to be safe with their condition. We also have print materials that we offer, and PDFs of those materials, like our SADS Safe Schools kit that we can email out, so that families can make sure that their kids are safe at school.
And last, Genevieve, how would a family, what's their easiest portal of entry to reach and connect with the SADS Foundation? Is it through the website? Is there a different way?
The website is a great place to go. We have a contact us site on our website, and I think Erin's going to throw that up in the chat. You can directly email me at genevieve@sads.org, and I can help guide you whichever direction you need to go in the SADS organization. And we also have a support line that you can call, and Erin's also going to put that number up in the chat for us.
Great. Well, Genevieve, thank you. And for you and the team that put together that video, Really, really enjoyed it. It was very moving, just as you say. And so I thank you for all that you're doing and have done, and really took our family support. It's been what we've been about at SADS Foundation for 30 years, but truly since your arrival on the team, you've taken it to next level. So thank you. And with that, I'll let you go and have a wonderful remaining week and weekend. And then Aaron, I'm looking on the sidebar for the questions with 25 minutes on the counter. So first, Dana, great to see your name again. And guess what? I'm coming to Ireland, and hopefully with my lovely bride. We have a meeting starting next week at the Association of European Pediatric Cardiology in Dublin. So I'll be returning to your country, and I have a wonderful memory of my first and only visit until now to Dublin, where I had dinner, had a wonderful opportunity to have dinner with my third son, Jens, with Dr. Ward, now passed away, but Dr. Ward of Romano-Ward syndrome, described after the two physicians, Dr. Romana and Dr. Ward, who first described long QT syndrome in a paper published 60 years ago this year in 1963. And so I love Dublin. Can't wait to come back, eager for it. But until then, have your questions. Gloria, you're welcome. And the first question goes to Graham. And so Graham's asking, what's my stance on swimming for younger kids with type 1 long QT syndrome, particularly just in the neighborhood pool? Looking for guidance for their two boys. Boys are great, age 2 and 5. And those boys love swimming and sports, and just diagnosed last month, and you're new navigating this. Our local cardiologist, not much help. Well, we could talk about that part, but we won't. What we'll talk about is the swim. Now, I cannot give personal advice. I have no idea your exact long QT, your QTC, the boys' risk, but I'll tell you in general what my approach and view is. We publish the link between LQT1 and swimming, different phenotypic triggers that are more likely to bother LQT1 than to bother LQT2 and LQT3. And swimming was one of those early discoveries, which we first published in 1996. And it turned out that if you presented with a near drowning and had a prolonged QT interval, you were far, far more likely to be LQT1 than any of the other conditions. That then translated into thou shalt not ever go into the water. And I think that was a mistranslation, because all of those individuals, almost all, who have LQT1 triggered events have them while undiagnosed and therefore untreated. So in my patients with long QT1 who have been diagnosed and carefully evaluated, carefully treated, we let them largely return to almost everything they love to do, including the water, if it's their passion. Now, if water's not their thing, why bother trying to teach them to go into the water? But if they're just, Aquaman, Aqua Boy, and they love water, I'm not afraid of the water in LQT1 where it's been diagnosed and treated. Do I take precautionary measures for our treated LQT1 patients going into the pool, the neighborhood pool, any water? Yes, I do. That's called the automatic external defibrillator, the AED, as part of the safety gear. That must be poolside. Now, I say must be poolside, and yet in 23 years now, we have never had a treated LQT1 patient get an AED rescue shock in any setting. And that includes having LQT1 individuals who love the water so much that they're really good in it, and they become competitive swimmers at very elite levels. So I'm not afraid of the water in a treated LQT1 patient. Now, you mentioned in follow-up of jumping and diving underwater. That's a little different. I'm not crazy about an instantaneous dive into the water, especially if the water's cold, that could then activate the so-called dive reflex and cause a sudden shortening of the heart rate, slowing of the heart rate, and then maybe upset the apple cart, if you will. So I preferred not that. And then the only other caution I have for my swimmers is no intentional breath holding, whereby and then you try to swim the 25 meters and flip underwater and swim back. I used to do that. I was kind of good at it. But that breath hold is a setting that can trigger a sudden slowing of the heart rate, which could again bother the long QT heart. So apart from those two modifications in swimming activities, I'm not afraid of the water. Dana, who is from Ireland, also posted a question. So I think that's fair. And Dana's question is, do I think there will be a treatment for LQT2 in the future that will not involve beta blockers? For someone who exercises and you love cycling, you're frustrated on Nadolol and you never have had a long QT2 triggered episode. I hope so. We're working hard for a future like that. In fact, 2 Zoom meetings ago today, I had a call with venture capitalists about a future in long QT therapy that could be beta blocker free solution. So I would love it if before I retire that we have figured out beta blocker free treatment strategy. Now we're already doing that in some of our patients who didn't tolerate beta blocker, and that might be denervation. We have a large number of patients who have one-time therapy denervation only. Would I do that for LQT2? Maybe not. So we're working hard at it. In fact, you'll be interested to know, Dana, that the company, we've had them on the program, Thrive Therapeutics, they have a new drug, an SGK1 inhibitor that we've tested in the dish, have published it, shows beautiful shortening of the cellular QT interval in LQT2 cell lines, better than other strategies like mixilotine. And more importantly, this is translated into the company launching the first phase 1 clinical test for their drug in initially LQT3 patients later this summer, and then soon LQT2 patients shortly thereafter. And if that drug works as we anticipate, there could be a first FDA approved drug for the treatment of long QT syndrome. Now, it remains to be seen whether that drug will replace the beta blocker altogether as a possibility or enable a lower dose treatment strategy of the beta blocker or some combination thereof, but very exciting. And we just presented for the first time in Barcelona, Spain last week, the first rabbit trial of our Mayo Clinic gene therapy. This was in long QT1 rabbits. The first time we've ever shared the animal results, and it's working. Still early, but it's very encouraging, the outcome so far. And for you, for LQT2, we just injected the first LQT2 rabbits with our gene therapy about a month ago. So it's all happening in real time, really fast. Of course, it's not going to be near as fast as what you would like or I would like for you, is to come up with a beta blocker free solution for you tomorrow. But tomorrow, as in 3, 4, 5 years from now, very hopeful about that future. It's the first time we've ever been to say that with any kind of optimism. So hope you like that good news. Amy's wondering, are there any support services available for teenagers? Great question. Yes, there is. Genevieve has in the SADS Foundation a support group for the teenagers, the adolescents. When we have our SADS family programs where they gather together, we have special programs just for the kids and the adolescents. So reach out to the SADS Foundation to find out more information about for the teens. From a patient in South Africa, love South Africa, only been there once, Cape Town, but it had amazing experience. Tabletop Mountain, I think, or Table Mountain. But there, your daughter was diagnosed with CPVT when she was 5, also diagnosed with epilepsy in November of last year, had 3 seizures in one evening, currently taking a medicine Coralan in the morning and evening, as well as 50 milligrams of another one in the morning and evening. Is this normal for a CPVT patient to experience extreme low heart rate episodes with lethargy? Really good question. The standard therapy, and I don't recognize the name Coralan. That's not a medicine that we have, or at least that name. It might be one that I would be familiar with if I saw a different a generic name. But the normal treatment now in CPVT, especially if it's ryanodine receptor mediated, is combination drug therapy with beta blocker as part 1 of that combination, preferably Nadolol. If Nadolol is not available in your country, like it is not available in the Netherlands, then propranolol as the other beta blocker. And then besides Nadolol or propranolol as part 1 of the combination, part 2 is a medication called flecainide. And flecainide can be given in a liquid formulation as well, potentially. And then if we needed additional treatment intensification, we add the triple prong to it as the left cardiac sympathetic denervation. So that's how we address CPVT in 2023 in general. Diane's asking, could I address the importance of hydration in LQT2? Hydration, well, what's most important in whether you're LQT1, 2, or 3 is really avoiding dehydration. So we want people to stay replenished with hydration, replenished with electrolytes, because we know in a state of nauseating and vomiting illnesses or dehydration, you can have changes in your electrolytes, most importantly, changes in the levels of potassium in your body, which is measured by your serum potassium level. And we know that low body potassium is sort of the enemy or an enemy to long QT syndrome that can annoy and trigger a QT episode. So we just encourage our patients, whether they're an athlete or not, to always stay well hydrated, and well hydrated with non-caffeinated beverages, water, electrolyte replenishment drinks, your favorite vitamin drink, whatever, just non-caffeinated in the sense that caffeine can act as a diuretic and decrease your hydration status. Emma, what would be my first pick for an antiarrhythmic? Mexilatine just seems so toxic, and Europe questions it. Emma, it depends on what I'm treating. So we don't need too many times the antiarrhythmic. For example, if we're treating Brugada, the antiarrhythmic drug of choice, if we're using a drug, would be quinidine. If we're treating CPVT, the antiarrhythmic drug of choice, if we add the antiarrhythmic, which I guess technically beta blocker is not viewed as that in terms of that word, that antiarrhythmic drug for CPVT is flecainide. If we're treating long QT syndrome, that antiarrhythmic drug that we might add as combination therapy, say in LQT3 or LQT2, besides their beta blocker, or instead of their beta blocker in some situations, is mexilatine. Mexilatine is the preferred long QT antiarrhythmic at this time. April has 2 of her daughters been diagnosed with CPVT, both medicated. Mom, you, April, have also tested positive for the RYR2 gene mutation, but no symptoms that you're aware of. Do you recommend that you take the beta blocker? Ooh, good question, April. Again, just reminder, I can never give a personal direct recommendation. Of course, that would be irresponsible of me without actually caring for you, evaluating you, seeing you. So I'd always be delighted to do that. But I can tell you how I do it in general for patients out there in similar situations. So The guidelines, first of all, advise that all patients with CPVT be on universal beta blocker therapy, meaning diagnosed with CPVT clinically by the treadmill stress test or by the genetic test marker compels a treatment recommendation, sign the prescription for beta blocker therapy at the minimum. Now, do I do it that way? No, I don't. I left that approach probably a decade ago, where I have felt that mandating beta blocker therapy just because your genetic test comes back positive may be resulting in overtreatment and then in introducing an unacceptable quality of life from the beta blocker related side effects, if those side effects occur. Now, many patients tolerate their beta blocker beautifully. So in situations like an adult who's never ever had a symptom, the only reason they're caught is because of your scenario where the cascade testing revealed that you were the positive one, meaning you possessed the genetic marker, not their dad. Would you now have to be on beta blocker? And my view is I don't think so. So in my approach is that I take that variant positive individual and I see, do they show me any evidence of CPVT? Can I make the diagnosis without the genetic test? So if I ran that person through the drill, ECG, Holter, treadmill, and I don't see CPVT present at all, then I don't feel like I must treat you with beta blockers. I think it then should be viewed as optional. The guidelines hasn't caught up to that yet. They tend to lean towards positive test, beta blocker for everybody. And I think we're going to eventually get there where it's the guidelines will see it my way. Amanda's asking that your son with LQT1 just got diagnosed with ADHD, and they've come to the point where they're encouraging medications. Quite a few of the meds are stimulants, but would a non-stimulant be safe? We'll be consulting with the cardiology team, but my thoughts in the meantime. This is a really important question. We've actually published this, and you could Google it and find out what we've published and showed, but we have shown that our long QT patients with concomitant ADHD occurs at the same frequency as the general population. In other words, about 7 to 10% of kids are diagnosed with ADHD. About 7 to 10% of my patients with long QT syndrome have concomitant ADHD. So in other words, the diagnosis, the mutation, the genetics have nothing to do with ADHD. The second observation we made is that we were encountering all kinds of patients, therefore, as in 7 to 10% of my long QT community, who was having their ADHD unaddressed, meaning fear of treating the ADHD pharmacologically out of fear that that treatment would be long QT triggering. And that had caused all kinds of complications called I'm not doing well in life. Now, there's a lot of ways to address ADHD, and I am not an ADHD specialist, but we should be doing all kinds of strategies pre-drugs, working hard at that. And I'm betting that you have done that. You've been trying the cognitive behavioral strategies, and you and their specialists and the kids as specialists are working on that. And they've come to a point where saying, I think that despite our non-medication strategies, your child would benefit from drug therapy. Once that specialist and you have come to that conclusion, my fear that an ADHD therapy would be disease triggering to your well-treated long QT, assuming that part of the equation is well treated. In that setting, my fear is almost zero. And we showed that. We showed that the events of our ADHD treated long QT patients was no different than the long QT episodes in the untreated patients. The only difference was that those who were having their ADHD meaningfully treated, dramatically higher quality of life, as you can imagine. So work with your team, but know that in our program, I want to treat all of your son, not just your son's heart. And we have the ability to do that well in general. Diane, it looks like we might get the last question. We'll see if I get to Kayla's. Oh, hi, Kayla. But I have a meeting that I must jump at the top of the hour. So here we go. Diane's, for those who are not candidates for a defibrillator, a young adult son with autism and intellectual disability, what are your thoughts about repeat loop recorders? Had a cardiac arrest in 2017, had a loop recorder afterwards, no episodes since, but he likely can't communicate. I wonder if repeat loop recorders make sense. Well, I don't know the condition being referred to there, Diane, for your son. I'm wondering if it could potentially be CPVT. Arthur Wilda's program and ours showed that in ryanodine receptor CPVT, there's a small but measurable number of intellectual disability as part of the spectrum, higher than the background rate in the general population. In other words, we think that the ryanodine receptor mutation that's in the heart is also in the brain, and it could contribute to some level of intellectual disability. Now, that level is small, about 10%. So I don't want CPVT families who are highly functioning cognitively, neurologically, to wonder when the shoe is going to fall off. It's not. Most of my CPVT families have high intellectual ability and capability. And so it's not all CPVT1, but there's a measurable subgroup, again, about 7 to 10% for that. And it depends. And so a cardiac arrest 6 years ago, 2017, often prompts a defibrillator recommendation. But if it was CPVT, we know that we could treat a CPVT cardiac arrest survivor without a defibrillator. That was also demonstrated in a publication in European Heart Journal by my friend, Dr. Arthur Wilda's program. We were involved in that. And so maybe that's what's going on. I don't know. But for a monitoring strategy, the idea of a loop recorder for monitoring, particularly in the scenario that you described, I like the loop recorder a lot. Do I think all patients with long QT CPVT Brugada should get a loop recorder? No. And I'm seeing way too much of this loop recorder stuff being thrown in. I don't need it, but generally, but in special scenarios like the one described, I kind of like the loop recorder for ongoing rhythm spell correlation. Last one, I'm going to give it quick to Kayla, and then we have the ones that we missed or didn't get to that will join the first on the list the next time we gather together. And our next time is going to be, I think, let me see, March 5 or May 5. So 15 days from now. But Kayla's, what are my concerns for an RYR2 positive, non-symptomatic, medicated toddler with a parent who previously had emotionally induced sudden cardiac arrest as we approach temper tantrum season? Well, first, know that there's no such thing as the terrible twos or the terrible threes. It's called the terrific twos, the terrific threes. No such thing as the terrible teens, terrific teens. Change the mindset. So might there be temper tantrum? Sure. How should you address them? My view, I approach my patients without the white glove, meaning we should not be addressing them as fragile, thinking that if we get them upset or emotional, it could trigger their LQT2 or it could trigger their CPVT. The triggering of emotion in triggering all cardiac arrest almost always happens when you're untreated because you were not yet diagnosed. But again, once we get you diagnosed and once we get you treated, I think the threat of that trigger, swimming in LQT1, emotion in CPVT, and so forth, is largely being neutralized. And I think we would be exposing our kids to far more danger if we don't discipline them with the strategy that you might have chosen had they not had the genetic marker. So I'm not worried. Temper tantrum, it'll do its thing. You figure out how you want to treat or make sure they realize that sometimes that's not an option. But do your parenting, not worrying with this extra concern of could your parenting strategy or how you're going to navigate temper tantrums of life, will that upset the apple cart? Likely not if well treated. Great one. And we missed ones from Emma. We'll get to it, Beatrice, and the others. So again, great to see all of you. Thanks for coming on a Thursday. We'll try to keep it on Fridays, but we had a great turnout. So if I'm stuck on a Friday, we will take this as an opportunity to maybe realize we have a plan B optional day depending on my schedule. So again, this is a wrap. And until our next time together in 15 days, be well, live large, live and thrive despite your heart condition. Thanks a lot, everyone.